So greetings and salutations, friends and family. We are here on February the 4th, 2024, and it's World Engineering Day. World Engineering for Sustainable Development was proclaimed by UNESCO at its 40th General Conference in 2019, and it has been celebrated worldwide on March the 4th every year since 2020. It's a day to highlight engineers and engineering achievements in our modern world and improve public understanding of how engineering and technology are central to modern life and for sustainable development. So today, World Engineering Day 2024, here at the Future Sense Now Futures Forum, we are talking about engineering smart futures for Africa. And this is really a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I live it, I bleed it, and the whole purpose of this is to really continue the conversation we've started, I think, since COVID, in getting engineers together around the world, engineers of African diaspora around the world, to see how can we accelerate Africa's development. Many engineers are not involved in politics anywhere in the world. It's something we don't tend to do. And I think for that reason, many decisions that are taken, even in here in the United States, but certainly in the Caribbean and Africa, are not done with a very pragmatic, logical way of doing things. But I do believe that engineers build and run the world, and we should be more aggressive or assertive in ensuring that we really move the literacy around engineering and sustainability to a new level. So we know we're talking about sustainable literacy across the world. We're talking about global sustainable development goals, 17 of them, and every single one of them demands that we understand what engineers do. And so today I have a roundtable of dynamic leaders in academia, in business, and they're all from the African continent and African diaspora. Some are here in the West, some are there on the continent. And we're going to have an exchange about how we can advance sustainable literacy in Africa, African engineering institutions, such that we can move forward to advance the sustainable development of Africa with a little bit more acceleration so we can meet the sustainable development goals. I don't know if we're going to at least get closer to achieving the goals by 2030. And might I also add that this year the UN is having a summit on the future. And I've noticed that not many engineering groups in civil society have responded, even though there is a section on the pact that talks about science, technology, innovation, and data. But it's not too late for African engineering community to get involved. So I'm hoping that this conversation will also spur the African engineering community to ensure that African civil society voice is not left out of the deliberations of what the global future looks like, how multilateral decisions about things like AI and synthetic biology and chemical aerosols, etc., space, ocean use, all of which is decided by how engineers design and build things, is not, African voice is not left off the table. A lot of it is at stake. So let me begin by asking our panelists to spend just a quick minute introducing themselves. I know them quite well, but their resumes are like yay big. So I'm going to ask them first to just go, what did you study? Why did you become an engineer? And what is it that you want to talk about when you think about Engineering Day? Why did you choose to be on this panel today? I'm going to start with James because he's upmost on my screen.
Hi, everybody. And thanks for inviting me to be part of this program. I shared some material by email. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, because when Dr. Claire sent the email about notes for the meeting, she remembered that we met back in the 80s at one of the conferences of the International Society of African Scientists. And for those who might not be aware of that, I was able to dig up some more details on that, history, and I shared it on email. But when you get a chance to see it, you'll see that we've been talking about this now for 40 years or more. And in the conference of that society back in 1986, yours truly happened to have been the keynote speaker, talking about the same thing. And if you look at the long list of other speakers throughout the years, you'll find some of the biggest names you can ever imagine, both in industry, in government, and wherever. So the question is, why, after all this talking, have we not made a difference? So I'm here, I'm going to keep shut up for now and let others introduce themselves so we can actually ask some tough questions and hopefully come up with answers that will push us forward.
Yes. Now let's go to Kwabena Boateng.
Wow, Dr. Fabunmi, what an honor to be in such a esteemed company. Kwabena Boateng, I am the founder and president of African Diaspora Nation, which is a metaverse platform to revolutionize engineering education across Africa and its diaspora, leveraging the best of technology available today. I am an electrical engineer by training, product of Florida A&M University. Pretty extensive industry experience working for Chevron Corporation across New Orleans, Houston, Angola, and Nigeria. Also, background in robotics and fulfillment technologies, working with Amazon's Robotic and Fulfillment Technologies division as the head of system safety and trust. And finally, vice president of the IEEE Computer Society's membership and general geographic activities committee board. So that's the background with which I come. I am passionate about Africa, actually global Africa, right? Which is Africa, the Caribbean, and all places where you have people of African descent. And I became an engineer. I didn't know then. I was just great in the arts and in the sciences, right? Math, physics, chemistry. I grew up in a community of engineers. That's all I knew. But it all makes sense now when I connect the dots in reverse. Technology, engineering is the way we leapfrog African development. And that's what I think about on this engineering day. So that's it for me. Look forward to getting in deeper.
Thank you so much. Dr. Oludare Owolabi, how are you? Floor is
Fine.
yours.
Fine. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say hi to my mentor, Professor Funsho Falade. How are you doing, sir? So, and
thank you very much. I'm fine.
Many years ago, that was about maybe 1987 or 88. He taught us structural analysis, and that was at Obafemi Awolowo University. Thank you very much for the knowledge
You're
that
welcome.
you guys imparted in us, and also made Professor Ogedembe. He taught us a lot of courses, and that really imparted a lot of things, especially to sustainability, resilience, and sustainability. So by the special grace of God, I'm the Director of Sustainable Infrastructure Development, Smart Innovation, and Resilient Engineering Research Lab at Morgan State Department of Civil Engineering at Morgan State University here in Baltimore, Maryland. So where we have been doing a lot of work on developing sustainable and resilient critical infrastructure. You know, as a lot of human activities are really happening, and if care is not taken, this heart may be, if it's not accurately replenished, so we may find it uncomfortable to live. So how do we, as engineers, as professionals, as we continue to develop all this critical infrastructure, and how do we continue to incorporate sustainability and resilience so that it can quickly recover and from all any stressors that are due to climate change, like sea level rise, storm surge, geohazard. So all these developments that are going on, And how do we ensure that we use recyclable materials in doing that? So I will just shut up. I will give to my other senior colleagues to introduce themselves.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go to the lady in the house, Madame Temi Akinwumi, who is another person I look up to as an entrepreneur. I always say, I wish I could grow up to be like her. The floor is yours. I want to be an entrepreneur. The floor is yours.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you, sir, gentlemen, for having me, and ma'am, thank you for your time. My name is Temi Akinwumi. I've been in tech for 3 decades now. I actually wanted to be a medical doctor when I was back home in Nigeria. My father is a maths professor, but he actually wanted to be, he actually told me about computer science at that time. And looking at that time, I wasn't sure what that was, but you have to listen to your father. So I can't say no, right? So I just say, okay, let me go for it. But looking back now, 10 years, I'm grateful for what, this has achieved in my life. I earned my first degree in computer science from University of Washington, D.C. here in Maryland. I'm in Washington, D.C. And my bachelor's, my master's in software engineering. I'm also master in cybersecurity. Right now, I'm working on my PhD in IT. And for the past 18 years, what I've been doing is empowering people, layman, don't have no IT background to break into tech. And right now I can look back, we have done more than 1,000 plus engineer to break into cybersecurity, project management, and things like that. And in one of those occasions that I've gone to support, people of color, especially in Africa, I've met Dr. Nelson at the conference, in Washington. And we've been together since then for, I'm sure it's more than 10 years now. So my major goal is to help people of African descent break into tech, keep the job and grow on the job. And it's all in the engineering space. And so over the year now, I can look back and can critically say that a lot of people already broke into tech and they are doing so well in tech. So with award from United Nations, Congress, Senate, all in the US and also, out of the US too, so far. So I'm so grateful for that. So I'm looking forward to this discussion today, that now that we have so many people in tech already, but we still have so much more that are not even in tech or engineering. So, and we know that the future is engineering, the future is tech. So how do we make it happen? A lot of people in Africa, especially in Nigeria, where I came from, are coming back now into this world, which is, we call it Japa syndrome. Now that when they go, are they going to go back? And when they go back, how are we going to use this thing to change Africa? I know a lot of our senior colleagues are here that are talking about 1980 and all of that. We have not done anything. I know we are new. I'm new. I'm a newer generation. But what can we do together to make this happen? So that's my goal.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Exactly what we plan to talk about. Mr. Joseph O'Day, you're new to me, but you're not new to me because you're my brother. So welcome. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I'm so grateful to be here. I got a call just, was it last 2 days or so, that, hey, there was something going on here, if I could join. So I told the executive director of Ghana Institution of Engineering, no problem, I'll take up the challenge. So I'm very grateful to be here. And thank you for meeting such personalities that I have in there. I see Kwabra. I hope Kwabra is a Ghanaian as well. So
I sure am.
So,
happy to see you.
yes. And my name is Joseph O'Day. I'm into geotechnical practice for the past 24 years. I hold a BSc in geological engineering and then an MPhil in geotechnical engineering, all from the KNUST, Ghana. I have been the chairman of the Civil Technical Division from 2013 to 2023. of the Ghana Institution of Engineering as the chairman for the Civil Technical Division. So I've been on council for almost 10 years. And I'm the local chapter for the International Geosynthetic Society here in Ghana. And also currently I'm the director for Geotech, for the Geotechnical Department of the Architectural Engineering Services Limited here in Ghana. I do adjunct lectureship at the Central University where I teach foundation engineering and geotech engineering plus foundation in professional practice. All these years of my career, actually, it's a passion for me to go into mentorship, see how we can groom our young colleagues coming up and understand the practice of engineering. As a geotechnical practitioner, one thing I've realized in life is because we are involved in a lot of construction material, let me put it that way, we need to think about sustainability. It's very important. So it's not necessarily that as an engineer, you have done your designs and you think that is all. The question is, you should be asking yourself questions, what next in the exploitation of, materials? Whilst we have our environment being degraded as well, we should put it at the back of our mind. So, and I also am very passionate, as I've said, in mentorship. I've had a lot of students and national service person coming under through me via their training when they finish school or when they are in school, where I have a lot of interaction with them, at least just to also imbibe in them the concept of engineering and how to make engineering decisions. I must say that I'm very glad to be here, and I know that we are going to have a very wonderful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, our elder brother, Funso Faladi.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone. I thank Dr. Lansing for inviting me to this group. And I want to acknowledge the great work that my colleague, Dr. Oludare Owolabi, is doing at Morgan State University. My name is Funso Falade. I am a professor of civil engineering with emphasis on structural engineering and with research focus on the use of innovative construction material for the production of affordable housing. Yes, within the Africa continent and beyond, sometimes ago, I commenced this concept of engineering education in Africa. And we started driving it, I think that's since 2002. We're having a series of conferences, capacity building for engineering educators in Africa. We have a structure that incorporates experts from the 5 sub-regions of Africa. What is the challenge that we're trying to face? That is, we are just out to promote quality engineering education in Africa. We have some Africa in diaspora enlisted on our program. We invite them around and we move from one sub-region to the other to organize capacity building workshop, to equip people with different pedagogical approaches so that in terms of delivery, we can match our teaching style with the students' learning style all along. And yes, we have MOUs with different international organizations like the American Society for Engineering Education, Chinese Society for Engineering, quite a number of them. And we leverage on the strength of each one so that globally we are relevant. But just like has been said earlier on, there are some challenges in Africa. And so if we are going forward, we need to identify these challenges and then be able to build this into our achievement. Otherwise, there'll be so many, we have a few organizations that will be short-lived, like all this ANSI, and the one that has just been reported. So at this take-up point, I think we should also look at the sustainability of whatever we are doing, leveraging on the strength of African Union or sub-regional organizations that can actually assist us. One of the major problems that we have in Africa is support from government funding. We cannot rely on foreign funding without looking at what can our government do for us. So in an attempt to help the system must be able to help us. Even though we have the expertise to drive this thing, but to move it forward, we need resources. And so I believe maybe some of these things will come up when we are discussing. But for now, I rest my case, man.
Thank you so much. So we're off to good start. Everybody has a sense of where everybody's coming from. So we're here to talk about the future, and I'm a futurist. And I really, I'm happy that even though people say it doesn't have any value, that the SDGs have taken on the way it have taken on, because it really has created a sort of a common language in which we can begin to organize around. And so when I think about engineering sustainable futures for 2030, and the role that my organization, the Futures Forum, would like to play in the world. For me, a headline of success would read, the network of Centers for Sustainable Futures, which includes 15 universities across Africa, right, have succeeded in developing software that enables students studying engineering to do labs on the metaverse. Now, it's very specific. Why? Because for me, at the end of the day, if we have all of this talent, which we do have in all these places, it really is about changing and have a mind shift and having a shared vision of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that tie into number one, AU 2063 vision, right? As something that's also, in the case of where all of the people on this call are from West Africa, except for Ruth, she's in East Africa, but ties into the different, let's say, regional visions. We just saw that recently 2 of the countries, or 3 of the countries, the Francophone countries, have pulled out of ECOWAS. I don't know what that means. We still have to have roads, we still have rivers, we still have waterways. So what does that really mean? So we really have to find a way for engineers to help shape decision-making and sustainability of the economic and social and physical environment of African countries, so that African people enjoy a better quality lifestyle. So I'd like to have you think about and state, based on what you're doing. So, you have your company, your university. Funza, I'm asking you to speak from a perspective of someone who is running a continental association. Kwabena, I want to also speak from that perspective. What is that future and you're volunteering to do this, right? I'm a volunteer to do what I'm doing. What is it that you're trying to achieve, and what would 2030 success look like for you? And I'm going to start with you, Kwabena, because you are kind of also a link between us here in the US and back in Africa. So let me start with you. Unmute, please. Unmute. Yeah. Unmute. Yes.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
All right. So what headline do I want to see in 2030, sorry. Look inside Africa's success story, leapfrogging engineering education to the point of being sustainable in its infrastructure delivery, right? That's the headline I would like to see. Leveraging metaverse construct. So why do I say that? I don't want to be a spectator. I want to be a part of this. I have a company called Quantized Fulfillment Technologies, and that company right now is focused on building a metaverse platform, which allows the use of digital twins, physics-based simulations, large language models to create this unique, immersive space to catalyze the development of engineering and tech talent. I think this will be a critical enabler for, when I think about sustainability, I think of what somebody like Buckminster Fuller, I don't know how many people are familiar with him, said, right? Making the world work for 100% of humanity without ecological offense or disadvantage of anyone by means of an engineering revolution. That is what I think about when I think sustainability. It is a high bar, but I believe that when we strive for that, leveraging the best of technology, right? Leveraging the best of our resources globally, we have no excuse today. We don't have to physically be going to every country to impact change, right? To make an impact. Primarily because now, today, just within the last year, the technology available to us is such that we should be able to make significant headway just by building organizational capability, leveraging whatever resources we have in our own networks, but connecting them, right? And enlisting people who have a volunteer spirit, as well as forming strategic partnerships with organizations such as the one I'm in leadership in, IEEE, Computer Society, and its equivalents across other disciplines, because the future is interdisciplinary. That's where the solutions to problems are. It should be interdisciplinary. Education should be project-based and relevant to the societal context that we find ourselves in. And I believe we also need to engage the United Nations, UNESCO, UNDP, and influence and shape some of the programming as it pertains to global Africa.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to go to James Fabuni and hear your take on what a successful 7 years for you would look like. What would that success be for you?
Thank you so much. I will try to be brief, because this is something that I said I've been harping on for over nearly 40 years. So I have stuff in my head that I can't even come out with right now. But to answer your question directly, success for me would be for engineers, first of all, to think differently from how they think today. Because engineers are the bridge between knowledge and the economy. We're the ones that translate the physics, the math, the chemistry into production processes that allow people to create value and be prosperous. And one of the key questions that pierces me on the side, time and time again, is why Africa, that is responsible for the riches of other parts of the world, still remains an item that is considered poor. To me, there's a paradox there. There's a paradox between calling Africa poor and recognizing that Africa is the source of wealth for other cultures or other nations. So that's just one key question there. And my line of thinking on that has to do with how much of technology is Africa deploying for creating prosperity for itself. And even though, my background is in aerospace engineering, I'm an MIT graduate with PhD, and I've done my entire, active career in defense aerospace technologies. I was guided to actually, putting my notes together on that topic into the book that you're looking at in my background, From Brainpower to Economic Power, where I argue that if we challenge ourselves to not copy other people, not just mimic what we see going on in Europe or America, what have you, we challenge ourselves to look at our own society and look at where the majority of our population are, and ask ourselves, to what extent is technology being deployed for their prosperity? Then we will begin to actually look to a future where Africa acquires the technology it needs to be a global power. That's
yeah. Thank you so much for that. That mindset shift. So we're not copying. Future Africa is not going to look like a mini England, a mini London, a mini New York, a mini. I'm almost curious about that. Why does all our architecture have to look the same way? So you don't know you're in a distinct place. Anyway, let me jump to Professor Owolabi. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Ma. How do we envision year 2030? Just of recent, I think many presidents, they went to the United Nations Forum and they were talking about it's high time to begin to address climate change. So how can we reduce the carbon footprint through the reduction of the use of fossil fuels and now promoting more of the use of renewable energy so that we can begin to reduce the carbon footprint. As we are aware that as this the carbon footprint destroys the ozone layer, which protects the ultraviolet rays from reaching the Earth's surface, thus subsequently leading to global warming. As there is erratic climate conditions, especially global warming, and this global warming leads to the warming of the glacier ice. And as the glacier ice is warming, there is what we call sea level rise. And then majority, about 70% of the cities are coastal cities. So just imagine in the next 100 years, all these cities are inundated with water. Where are we going to be? So it's high time that we take this reduction of carbon footprint very seriously as engineers, as decision makers, so that we stop and limit our reliance on the use of fossil fuel, so that we can begin to shift to renewable energy. And also, as engineers, I thank my mentor, Professor Falade, his area in material. So the materials that we choose in our construction to ensure that they are renewable materials, that will not deplete the limited material that we have in the heart of today. So if we can move the needle just a little bit in that direction and everybody start thinking about sustainability, thinking about this, we want to conserve our environment. I think we will do a very good job in moving the needle forward in that
Thank
direction.
you. Professor O'Day, I'd like to hear your take. You're still at NUS, right?
No. I'm practicing now.
Okay.
The adjunct is at Central University. It's one of the universities in Ghana here. Yeah.
Okay. So I had an opportunity to speak in Ghana in 2019 at the NESB, National Institute of Black Engineers Conference there. And I gave a talk about the future of engineering. I think it was at one of the engineering schools they had it. And I referenced the Ghana 2053 vision statement. And nobody had ever seemed to have read it. So I'd love to hear your take on, from your perspective as chair of a very significant professional association. 2030 is only 6 years from now. Is there anything specifically that you can say, here's what I'd like to see in your field?
That is a good question. But let me say that I have been the forefront of working with other colleagues when we came up with the Engineering Council Act, and also working on the Ghana Institution of Engineering Constitution Amendment. And I can tell you in a brief, what I want to see Africa in the next 2030 is the enforcement of engineering regulations. That is very, very important. And that is what is not encouraging us to really go around engineering. I mean, what is the engineering requirement when it comes to contracts? Are the locals benefiting? No. It is because if the encouragement is not there, you won't get people to love the engineering practice. So it's not like the US where it's highly enforced. I mean, you cannot be a PE and say you want to do something regarding engineering. But in Africa, it's not too effectively implemented. So I want to see the Africa where we take engineering business seriously at that level of governance, the enforcement of engineering practice in Africa. And that's what my take on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that. And I think for me personally, who work in the international development arena, maybe that's something could come out of this in terms of, number one, too often I think the big contracts and the way those contracts are designed, whether it's World Bank or African Development Bank, AID even, prejudice the development of indigenous knowledge and talent. And we've got to find a way to make sure that we begin to agitate on this side, right? Because enough of us are now. There are many Africans who are in very significant positions in this administration right now. You know, there's an African woman who is in the National Space Council, for example, in this White House. So we're talking about there's one who's involved in trade, so very significant positions. So I do think we have opportunities now we never had 20 years ago, James, 30 years ago, James, that we can definitely, if we work a little bit differently, we probably can get more done. Funso, the floor is yours. What is the thing? Had a great conference last year. I participated virtually, and you know my passion is linking and partnerships and research and education partnerships. What can we achieve by 2030 in terms of what your organization came out with last year, October, at your conference? What's on the table that we have to put in mind as we talk today and keep in the back of our mind?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, man. From the background that I gave, I studied civil engineering in the university. But in 1998, a professor from Poland invited me to attend a global colloquium on engineering education. And when I got there, of course, Africans were really not there. And the issue borders on all challenges around engineering education, ranging from curriculum, pedagogy, inclusiveness, diversity, and so on and so forth. So when I came to Nigeria, I then met the Secretary General for the National Commission for UNESCO, and I explained what I saw in Poland and the need for Africa to come together as a force and develop strategies for improvement of engineering education in Africa. Well, she agreed. And subsequently, there was a UNESCO paper that came to her and it said, identify projects in the documents, which I identified 4 projects, but approval was given for the sub-regional engineering education new curriculum. So I leveraged on that to expand this and have the first Africa Regional Conference on Engineering Education, bringing people from the sub-region and one of my colleagues from South Africa as a consultant. And then that was in 2002. After that exercise, we invited people from America. They came, they discussed curriculum, all assault. And after the end of the program, it was adjudged to be a good motive to continue meeting together. So, and at the University of Lagos, we hold the second edition in 2004. And so after that, we moved to South Africa. That is in 2006. And in South Africa, we established Africa Engineering.
Funso, I don't want a history. We don't have the time. I want you to focus on what you want to achieve by 2030.
By 2030, 2030, what we intend to achieve is to promote the quality engineering education in Africa, that all the engineers from university are relevant to development. There have been a sort of disconnect, as they were saying it, and we're trying to match this on. Yes, somebody with a PhD coming to academics does not guarantee that if you have a PhD, you can teach effectively. We are building capacity in engineering and technology educator to ensure that coming to the classroom, you will be able to disseminate information and there will be acquisitions of knowledge such that the product can be of immediate use in the industry. Most industries around here now, when they engage graduates, they try to retrain them to match what they are doing in the industry. And that way, when finished, we want them to be relevant and be useful of immediate use in the industry.
That's a very good point. And I think it's important because many times also I'm hearing, I don't know for a fact, but it's certainly happening in Jamaica. People come up with a degree and they can't do anything and they think they know everything. So it's a very big information gap. And perhaps the work that Kwabena is doing in his metaverse space could help to address that issue. So tell me, the floor is yours. You are in industry. You are very much connected to the technology, cybersecurity, which drives everything, right? Cybersecurity drives every single engineering discipline, but you do other things as well. Tell us, what is your vision then for how your company, which is 18 years old, can make some shifts happen by 2030?
Yeah, thank you so much. In 2030, my company is my IT university and also Top Group Technologies. What we're trying to do is IT university is focusing on education, and my Top Group Technology is focusing on implementing innovative solution in cybersecurity and software engineering. So with my IT university, I'm trying to see how we can use the graduates to spearhead global cybersecurity innovation and sustainable development and making waves in Africa tech land space, even if it's here or in the diaspora or in Africa. So this headline, I want to encapsulate the remarkable achievement that my university alumni, like I've said, in driving the cybersecurity innovation on a global scale. So that's one of my area. And also particularly emphasis on transformative impact within the Africa tech ecospace. So I want to see how we can spearhead this innovation. We want to highlight the leading role that, our our engineers can make in Africa and how to advance the solution worldwide. Because here we have people from every part of Africa, every part of Africa, So how can they take this thing beyond just learning?
Yes.
It's not just learning, it's also seeing how you can give back, how you can also empower others. For example, this month is Women History Month. I'm a woman, and when you look at it, women are not even in the forefront, okay, in tech, in engineering, as we can see. So how do we take this approach and bring the women in the front too, so that they can also be involved in this discussion? Because I believe that when you train a woman, you are training a generation. I mean, that's just how it is. It's the truth. So how do we involve them so that we have a broader mission on how we can go beyond just technical proficiency, but how do we also secure the digital asset that we have in Africa? Because believe it or not, Africa, I don't want to use the word that we are behind in these things, right? But there's a reason why we are out here. The reason why we are out here in the Western world is to make sure that we have growth in the technical, in engineering and resilient. We speak all these big languages, all these big grammars, but we are not being actionable as we should. And that is a pain for people like me. I know, So how do we foster economic development and social progress in this discussion? Cybersecurity is a very big topic that we are not even touching in Africa. We have not even scratched the surface. So I want to see more discussion on cybersecurity I want to see more discussion on how do we protect our infrastructure from threats and being vulnerable to attack. Because attack, you know, is going to be, we cannot stop attack. It's going to happen. You see that we prepare for this future or the future will happen. It's better to prepare for it before it happens to Africa. We have all this infrastructure. We're trying to digitalize everything. Now, as we digitalize everything, we also start thinking about cybersecurity, supporting this infrastructure, protecting it, making sure it's not vulnerable, and sustain it. As well as we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these things, we need to start thinking about it. The professors in Africa, institutions, how do we start putting this into the curriculum? How do we start making sure the youths are going to be engaged? Because right now the youth are everywhere. They're on Twitter, they're on LinkedIn, they're everywhere trying to make a change. Cloud engineering, these are all engineering. So how are we able to put this innovation solution into practice?
All right, I'm gonna try to answer that, and as we continue this discussion, because this discussion for me is not just an exercise in having an event. I really do want us to try to come up with something we can actually do when we leave here. So, hearing what you have all said, and we have two countries in the room. We have Ghana in the room, in terms of we have somebody who is on the ground in Ghana and somebody's on the ground in Nigeria, right? And then we have people here. So great. So when we hear all of this, at the end of the day, if we're talking about a metaverse and university or whatever, which is a great thing, we already have started that process. We have somebody who has a network of engineering educators already, right? Actually, what we need to begin to think about in our next questions, as we actually, we might have had an idea when we came into the room, but now we're actually emerging something that's new from this conversation. We're talking about having to have a platform where we can begin to collaborate more, right? So, FUNSA has an association. How can Kwabena Boateng's network begin to create, let's say, a trial run for what this exchange of knowledge of teaching engineering teachers, and then how can somebody like Temi impose upon that training in cybersecurity, although Dar would impose upon that a case study in teaching sustainability. James would decide what he wants to teach, and then Dr. Ade, Joseph Ade will talk about the professionalization, ethics, and so in the, it's a small thing, but is what I'm talking about a possibility that you can begin to think about and reflect on and answer? Because I believe that FUNSA is still able in Nigeria to get a little room. Because if you talk about a university, let's be realistic, right? Universities do not necessarily change easily. The status quo is like the psychology of being the chancellor and the vice chancellor and being important. Who are you, little upstart, to come with this idea? It's just our culture. So we have to work around it. So now the beauty is that FUNSA has kind of retired, but still has a leg in this space. He can now say, okay, but I'm still the chairman of this important African organization. He can say, I need a little place where I can do this and get support from UNESCO or somebody to get this physical space. Same thing in Ghana. Joseph is in charge of the Institution of Engineers. He can say, we're doing this as an institution. Now we have 2 locations where we can do a case study. So I want you to all reflect on that and put out some ideas, reflecting on that vision of this collective future. How do you see, one question could be, how do you see the private sector, right? Africans in the private sector here in the US, as well as the private sector in Africa, supporting such a experiment for engineering, enabling engineering sustainability for itself in Africa. And I see you shaking your head, so I know, Kwabena, I'm going to give you the floor first.
I like where you're going with this, Claire, right? Because I also don't want to just talk or dwell too much on the past. Learn from the past, but appreciate the context we are in today. So practically, engineering education is a big focus area, right? The world is shifting so much. Dr. Fabumi says brain power to economic power. I say, as we think is what determines where we are economically. So something about the thinking is where we are, it's why we are where we are right now, all right? And so engineering education needs to shift. And apparently Fonso, Professor Falade has had a passion around that and built a network, right? So let's take a project. Let's take a project that is relevant to, so let me give you an example. Someone has a 200-acre piece of land that they want to use to do precision agriculture and build an agro-processing facility right next to that location, right? To do something like this in a sustainable way, we need to think about the power considerations. We need to think about satellite data to look at the environmental variables in the space. We need to be able to get a sense of the soil quality through various tests and all that, right? So we can essentially, with technology available today, build all this in simulation, in digital twins, without even doing anything on the ground, right? We get the basic information, we can build this virtually. And this, using this as a project-based framing for learning and building curriculum, right? Because you need to ask yourself, okay, what does the electrical engineer need to do within this context? What does the agriculture engineer need to do within this context? What does the civil engineer need to do within this context? How do you relate that to skills that need to be taught in the classroom, right? So now you're situating the whole learning experience within a project-based context. Why will I need someone like Mr. Funso Falade, who is an engineer and educator? Because it's not the private sector or industry person like myself who needs to collaborate on this. I need to collaborate with people in his network and form an interdisciplinary team to see how we recontextualize education, authentic education that preserves our originality and authenticity as Africans, not that we just copying, right? How do we create this connection? And how do we take our minds off the fact that we need a government, we need to go through government, we need to go through government? What do we have agency to do between ourselves right now in our own little way to show a minimum viable product? All right. It is time. It is collaborating on some grants. Dr. Oludare Awolabi is at Morgan State University, an institution where the president has shown a commitment to Africa over and over again. I was the organizer of the HBC Africa Homecoming Initiative, which Dr. Wilson endorsed and came to Ghana, West Africa in 2019 and picked up the middle name corner, right? So Dr. Wilson is a visionary. He supports innovative stuff, right? How do we collaborate? Me as African Diaspora Nation, me as Quantized Fulfillment Technologies, collaborate with Dr. Awolabi to come up with a grant which has an alliance, which you go to the grant-making organization, demonstrating that you have this global network and footprint to work within this project-based experiential learning construct. That is what we are calling the Global Africa STEAM and Leadership Advancement Initiative. Organizations, institutions pay a certain amount to subscribe to this platform. We do this grant. Somebody needs to write the grants. We work on that, leveraging our partnerships and relationships. Someone needs to actually design the platform, right? So when you look within this room, how do you overlay cybersecurity into this project-based learning? There is curriculum there, right? Now, Mr. Ode in Ghana Institution of Engineers, geotechnical, and all that, right? What are the geotechnical considerations involved in all this? Right, so just between the people here today, connections to institutions, partnerships for grant writing, taking advantage of the opportunity that you have people here in the United States where we don't have the exact challenges Dr. Ode has in Ghana. I can have an engineering company over here. We have academia over here. You don't need to go to Africa to start solving Africa's problems. You can even go to Worcester, Massachusetts, or the Bronx, or all these places within the United States, which has a lot of Africans, and design solutions for those spaces. Because they are cloud solutions, they become accessible globally. So it takes strategy, it takes partnership, it takes a commitment to be self-transcendent, right? Not selfish, but a mindset of self-transcendent, a mindset to serve. But just between the people in this room today, if we so commit, we can take off with something within the context of a minimum viable product that I think will be very, very successful, right? So I appreciate your question. But that's how I see the room.
That's actually a good answer, because again, we're moving towards something. We have about 30 minutes to go on this conversation. James Bunmi, you have been successful. We're talking about business of this now, minimal viable product, something you understand, something Kemi understands. I'm going to give you the floor first, and I'm going to come back to her, because we are here and we're the ones who probably have to support Dr. Owolabi politically, because everything is politics at a certain level, to get him the room to execute such a project in partnership with a group like ours. So, Dr. Fubunmi, what are your thoughts?
Well, I really want to concur with everything that Kwabena just said, because in one way or the other, he has touched on some of the attempts that I have made over the past several years, maybe decades, to do exactly that. And I'm very encouraged that somebody of a younger generation is actually thinking along those lines. So he can count on my support on whatever he chooses to do. In fact, I will also encourage him to expand the network beyond the United States, because we have an entire world out there where we might be able to even find partnerships that are stronger in supporting that effort. And that has been my experience, because, most of my active career, you can't tell, but I'm retired. I'm 74 years old. So
you look good.
When I was active, I actually, did a lot of work within the United States. And I have to be honest with you that your strongest partnerships might not come from here. You might have to go to places where they're more generous with sharing technology. They don't have as much restrictions as to what you can actually, export from here. And you can actually access higher levels of support organizationally and nationally. So that's really the only thing I want to add to what he has said. But the overall concept is very strong, and it reflects, some of my stories as well, except that, in many cases you find missing pieces here and there, and you keep going to try to plug in those missing pieces, And what I've tried to emphasize in recent years is to actually be able to demonstrate that value proposition to someone, so they can actually see that it meets their self-interest to support the activity and to propel it forward. Ultimately, what I would like to see us do as engineers is to rethink how we propagate knowledge into our economies.
Yes.
instead of thinking that all I have to do is get my degrees and go find a job somewhere, we should think in terms of when I get a degree in a particular discipline, I will seek for meaningful problems to solve with that knowledge and translate that solution into something that has economic value to someone. I mean, I was giving an example the other day to someone, like, I asked him, I said, do you know that you can pasteurize palm wine to increase the shelf life to almost 2 years and be able to export palm wine all over the globe as just like beer? And he said, really? I said, can you imagine like a container-sized processing plant, powered by, renewable energy, and you take it to the various local villages where palm wine is tapped, and you create industries, what I call modular distributed industries, that allows even the local palm wine tapper to have access to a global market just with technology, and that paradigm shift to me is something that we need to be looking at in areas like where we have all the raw materials grow from our soil. Why can't we as engineers figure out ways in which we can create economic processes that will bring that as prosperity back to the local villages and all the rural areas? Because the big thing for us in Africa is that our largest population of people are totally disconnected from this modern economic system that we talk about all the time. And it's our responsibility as engineers to bridge that gap. And so let me just stop there for now.
I really love that idea of distributed modular thing, because I am in addition to my being embedded at Morgan State, helping to build out the climate and space lab there. I'm also now in partnership with a university in Kenya, and they're in a semi-arid area, and they're actually very big on agriculture, and they're a little bit outside of Nairobi. And so we've been thinking about what are some concrete things we can do. So this idea of having a very specific proof of concept, viable product that has a couple universities testing this is something I think we could certainly package and sell. Temi, I'd love to hear from you, your take on this as we move forward.
Yes, thank you so very much. Also, what Kwabena said, that's great, because that's a great project. It's not just about talking, it's about actually getting something going. So I'm in support of that, and I'm 100% going to be working with, if you can just maybe key into that project, it's great, with the great minds here, and let's make it work. I'm ready for that. So that's what I would just say.
I'm in a good mood today. Yeah. I'm getting happier and happier today, because I've sat in many meetings with Morgan State, Vice President of International Partnerships. He's from Ethiopia. And in addition to Doc here on the call, I also work with Dr. Demore, who is in the physics department. So really, we do have, a lot of people ready and willing to work if we can create let's say the partnerships to move forward. So I'd like to hear now from the two people on the ground. Joseph, the floor is yours first. When you hear all of this, does it sound like a fantasy? Or because sometimes when we the diaspora go back, people are like, who are you to come and tell us what to do? You have this. So is there are there open arms? A few open arms, not to be everybody. Everybody never ever wants to move. I know that. Are there enough open arms, a handful of people that can work with our hand over here? Because two hands, you need two hands to clap or to clasp.
Thank you very much. Having listened to Kobna, having listened to James and Temi, I have been thinking in my mind that how do we create an environment that will be useful for interaction, that will promote ideas and support innovations? How do we do that? How do we create an environment that supports the renewal of ideas and make those ideas workable? How do we create an environment that supports improvement of skill sets? How do we set up funds for innovation within academic, based on industry academic, relationship? I've been thinking of, this man, Dr. Mensah, this Ghanaian who is in optic fiber. I think he was forefront when it comes to optic fiber. It's in Ghana, and he really want to push something where we want to apply the use of optic fiber in our railway system so that it can promote economic activities in the interland. But the system is not supporting it. That is my problem. That's why I ask all these questions. How do we create this enable environment? Comrade has a brilliant idea.
The metaverse. That is how you circumvent the stuff like that, right? That's why the metaverse is an environment. So you don't need to go through the political economy per se. It's like a lab. Ask for this metaverse lab, and you can build the entire thing in the metaverse with physics-based simulations, digital twins. That is the new trend in engineering, right? You can build the entire thing and simulate it without it being on the ground. And then you can show people that, look at what we've built. We've built it, we've tested it. So I just wanted to chip in and say, when we talk about the environment, it is an environment that transcends the political economies on the ground or the patronage networks on the ground.
And I have to say this because in my experience, I've worked in Washington for 30 years, right? And my particular skill set is in engineering change. You can't, there's no linear path. You have to be able to bob and weave. So if we know there's a mindset that we can't easily break, we do the metaverse and thing as a challenge that fits into what the status quo is comfortable with, right? While we're doing this, what I call this top level layer of change making, we're busy on the ground like Anansi, doing all kinds of things. I love the Anansi concept. I have a whole theory of change based on Anansi that basically says you are showing them what they need to hear for their ego-based leadership style, while we are now trying to build people who are in the evolutionary leadership style who can now begin to have, first of all, learn to work together so that enough of us are working together, we can then move these other people aside. That's the only way it's going to get done. And so this idea that engineers, I mean, yes, it'd be nice if a few more of them ran for office, but we're going to convince them to do, because most engineers hate politics. That's the reality. Well, the ones I know from Africa, the ones I know from the Caribbean, they're like, no, forget it. I'm not going to do that because it's too illogical for them. But the fact is, China has moved because China's leadership government, well, used to be, it's changing now, used to be mostly engineers. That's why they were able to move from point A to point D in such a relatively short time. When they moved to an engineering framework, they were able to get stuff done. So we have to see, how do we then use the space that is left by the SDGs, the space that is left by all of these different agencies, the whole alphabet soup of agencies, to say, here's a particular thing we can do. We believe we have the skill sets to do it. We believe we can use the conversation around climate change or food security. Food security is huge right now. So if we did a farming project, quote unquote, that could work because we can sell it as a food security test bed, for argument's sake. We can sell it also as a climate change test bed. We can sell it as a SDG. It fits into so many SDGs that it is going to help to dampen the, let's say, the political internal thing against it. And then if we know we have challenges around it being accepted because it's us, then we have to put the right face in front of this that they will accept us. This is just the way it works, right? So we have to understand that change is made when we understand the levers of change. My book is called Smart Futures for a Flourishing World. And when I talk about A and smart, is about the agents. And the agents sometimes are the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Those people who hold the key to power that refuse to open the door for others to come in. Not everybody wants to see a mega class in Africa, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, that is a robust mega class, because they benefit from having a larger poor. So we've got to understand that these are things that are not sort of talked about, but I think we can engineer solutions around them, because as I saw recently, there was a protest, I think, in Ghana and Nigeria, where the youth said, we don't want any rice, we want jobs. So the young people today have a mindset shift. You cannot buy them off with a few grains of rice, a pound of rice, and you drive through once every 5 years and try and buy their vote. They're just not having it. So we have a whole army of young people who are, I think, ready to be the change that they want to see. And the fact is we have to figure out how to tap into that. We're coming to the last 15 minutes, and I want us to go to the next closing question. We talked about this from the point of view of the industry. I'd love to hear from Professor Owalabi and Funso from the academic side. On the US side, is this something you think Morgan State through the center that you have, because you and I have talked a lot about this, creating the smart futures approach, right? That your center could find a way to position itself to be a sort of a test bed for such a partnership project. And I'm going to ask the same question of Joseph. You're not at a school, but is there a university in Ghana, like All Nations, for example? We know All Nations is run by a diaspora president. So we could definitely use All Nations, I think, as a test bed of this. So I'm not even worrying about that. They have the satellites and all stuff already anyway. But from terms of the climate, beside yourself, would you have a handful of people who would be like willing to go to bat to say, we got to try something different? We are 7 years away from the SDGs. We need to test a new model of diaspora engagement. The AU has says the West is the sixth constituency of Africa. And here we have engineers in the sixth constituency of Africa coming back to try to test something first in the metaverse and then on the ground. So, Professor, you have the floor first.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kobena has told you about our president. They gave him a middle name from Ghana, and they gave him a chieftaincy title. And is a visionary leader that looks 100 years ahead. So, because Africa, there are a lot of untapped resources in Africa. There are a lot of natural resources and human resources. So the problem is, how do we harness? So we are open. And Mr. Kwabena has really said that, anything you want to be successful in Africa, don't deal with the government. Don't deal with the government. Let that thing to be independent of the government. And we are ready to do that. And just like we don't have colleagues from rural agri extension here, their own responsibility is to introduce new farming techniques to the old farmers. So what they will normally do, they don't argue with them, because those old farmers, they don't want to change their techniques. Okay, they will tell them, the same plot of land, just give me some portion, maybe 30%. I'm going to implement my own new techniques on this 30%. Do your own, and then after the harvest, then compare and contrast. And then they will now be convinced. So that is exactly what we are talking here about digital twin, that we use emerging technology. We are proponents of this digital twin. Actually, we've been trying to get something from NSL. That's what we call the Idea Lab, in which we bring multidisciplinary talents together and brainstorm on problems. So if we are successful in using that digital twin to create virtual farm or virtual solutions to any of these problems, be it food problem, be it infrastructure development problem, we are able to simulate that, and then we are able to convince. We have very smart professionals in Africa. I can boast of that. And you can see we are all here on this line discussing this. We are all from Africa. So then after we have been successful in doing the proof of concept from this digital twin virtual simulation, and then let's reach out, whether to Professor Falade or Professor Joseph, give us where we can implement each, which is independent of the government. And then we shall be able to, at a very small scale, and see the results. So when the results start to yield very highly, then we can be able to convince other people and they will join the wagon. We are open to that. Our president here is open to that. So we are to partnering with the people in the industry and partnering with, because one of the slogans for our university is growing the future and leading the world. So we want to grow the future and we want to lead the world and partner with those people from the industry, people from global, so that we can put our global print in African nations.
Thank you. Funso.
Thank you very much. I want to align myself with what Mr. Kayabana Abatek said, which has actually been also collaborated by other speakers here. I think the key thing that we need is collaboration. When we look at Africa as a continent, there are many talents here. But just like I said earlier on, one of the limitations that we have, when you have ideas, we look up to government and government is really not forthcoming. But now we are looking at a scenario where we say for a start, let's take government out of this. But then from what Mr. Keben has said, we are talking about outsourcing resources from outside our continent. And I believe that whatever we are also trying to do is to the benefit of the masses. There is no way government will not be involved, even in terms of the implementation of what we must have developed as output of the research. We need to prototype. And more often than not, the research will have maybe to get our results, but in terms of prototyping and so on and so forth, we may need resources around here. But whatever it is, I support the concept of, say, having this project and then going around to see that it's going to be result-oriented, and then we take it from there. So collaboration with the industry is also very, very important. And over time, industry have been trying to shape our curricula in line with the requirement of the industry. So if we are working with them, we'll be sure that whatever we have as the end result of our research will be useful to them. But if research is done in isolation, then it may not be really applicable to what they need in the industry. So that collaboration is very, very important in forging ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This whole question of food security, I think would really be a good place to start, because we know that a lot of Africans' land is being bought up by all kinds of people. Small farmers are at risk. We've got to really take a look at the bigger picture of what's happening around the world. We've got to make sure also that we protect the let's say the sanctity of the right to food and the right to your own seed from the onslaught of GMO everything and corporations owning all of the germplasm, and we have a lot of work to do. So this is really a good project that has a complex system of systems challenges that we really have to start thinking about designing them differently. For digital twin, you're talking about, like you said, all kinds of engineering, plus you have the policy and legal and business aspects of what's happening around the space. We know, for example, that whether it's a satellite, whether it's new diseases, new fungus, all these things are part of the climate change process. So building a platform, a test platform to digital twin a problem and have students involved in that. So here's how we do it. We do a research project that we begin the way we mean to go on. If you have a center at a university here, 2 universities here, maybe 2 HBCUs here, maybe 3 or 4 universities in different countries. We have Cote d'Ivoire. I know somebody from engineering school who would probably love to be a part of this. We have Kenya, we have just 4 countries, that's enough. We now can say, what is the politics to get started? And so the agents in the system, when you map the agents in the system, you know you're going to have to deal with the reality that we can't escape the US government. We can't escape the World Bank and those organizations. But there's a way to design all of this into the design process. So we have them as allies, even if they're not actually necessarily funding, But allyship is important because the world is very small and we don't want to be blocked. I can tell you, last year when we had a space conference in Kenya, one of the people who came to speak she was from the African Development Bank, and she funds tech innovation. And I spoke to her about engineering innovation as well. And I feel that there's a ripe opportunity. We have many engineers as well in Africa who are designing new tools and new systems to do even food processing, and they're not getting support. So even that will be part of, let's say, the data gathering process around the mapping of the assets that we have in hand to put into this platform that could begin the process of creating, whether it's by a hackathon format or a summit format, the different ways in which you can test out different models. But definitely, I think that this is something very concrete that could get us to beginning to practice sustainability literacy without just having a course. Because a course is not going to get us to where we want. It's project-based learning. And I do think, as we think about how African engineers could participate right now in ensuring this comes up as part of the global futures, maybe now Funso can take this conversation and replicate it across his network, right? We're going to have this on tape anyway. We can share it, but to begin to get people thinking about this and maybe organizing an event, an engineering futures event that reflects on that reflects on what African engineers believe, that whole global pact on science, technology, innovation, and data, so we're not forgotten. And so, last question as we close up, I just want to give everybody a minute to close out to say, what is a takeaway from this conversation? And what would you be willing to say, stay involved as I work to get this process off the ground? Because I will follow up if you say you want to be contacted. So what is your takeaway? Let me start with Temi first.
Yeah, my takeaway is that we are going to use the metaverse, like Kwabena mentioned, to get this started. And I want us to have a timeline so that we can go by that timeline. Because before you know it, the time is here. 2030 is here. So let's get started. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Well, thank you. James.
Well, it has been a great conversation, and I'm actually quite pleased that, there's a younger generation of people who have as much passion and interest in making a difference. And of course, I'm available to lend my experience and to whatever it is that is happening. I wanted to ask for whether or not, Professor Falade, are you based in Ife?
No, Lagos.
Oh, you're in Lagos. Okay, because I think I heard somebody say you're at OAU.
Yes, I've migrated to Unilag. And
okay. Okay, because
I was formerly at OAU.
If it's my hometown, and I have a personal interest in getting some of these ideas implemented in all the farms and villages in the surrounding. Okay.
Okay. So,
nice. Very nice. You have a personal interest. I won't go anywhere. Personal interest is very important. Personal interest is very important. One of my personal interests here is that I'm thinking about climate change, and I'm thinking about all these flat islands. I'm like, where are these people going to go? The US may not want any more refugees. And we begin to have a conversation through the new African-Caribbean trade agreement to test out an area where if there were climate refugees from flat islands like Curacao, Aruba, Antigua, they would have somewhere to go. We have to think about these things. 50 years from now, where are these people going to go? As Lagos sinks, it's right, the delta is getting very high. How are we going to move these people inland? How are they going to move them in an orderly fashion? Why do we need to predict crisis? I'm a futurist. Why can't we use a metaverse to say, we're not going to accept this imposition that Africa is going to be in crisis? The same way Africa did not fall into crisis because of COVID. You didn't have to test your vaccine in Africa first. because Africans did not get sick at the rate they thought they would have gotten sick. Let's think about that. So we don't have to accept, first of all, metaphysically, emotionally, spiritually, the imposition of a vision of the future that has been cast since, the first slave ship moved from Africa to the Caribbean. We can write a different future for ourselves. And I have living proof that stories we tell ourselves really do shape the reality which emerges. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Great conversation. My takeaway is listening to all my colleagues here. It's basically collaborations between, for example, key professional institutions who are in a position, especially my experience, I'm much passionate about the young engineers. But the young engineers, these are those who have just completed school and they have about 3 or 4 years before they get professionalized. So you realize that within that space or that timeline, if they are not getting jobs, they change their mind on engineering. You don't get them again. So we have this space to attract them and work with them on any of the projects we intended to do. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you. Fundo, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I believe we are a group of people that is desirous of identify societal problems and identify how to solve such problems in a sustainable ways. And so, therefore, having said that, my take away is that having that in mind, we need to go from here with an action plan of having somebody to lead this team in terms of identification of these problems. And then where do we go from there? We're talking about research grant. How do we proceed? I think we need to set timelines for this action that we want to take. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I think I've had everybody except for from Morgan State. You're going to be very critical as well. So you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you very much for this forum. I just want to echo, it's time for action. Let's act right now and be in the back wagon, and because time is waiting for no one, and let's just collaborate and put the grant together and do the proof of concept.
Thank you. Folks, we have come to the end of a very exciting conversation. We totally went off script, and it is fantastic that we went off script, because the point is having conversations for the sake of conversations is not viable for us if we're talking about engineering smart futures for Africa. We have SMART goals, you know what they are: specific, measurable, achievable, whatever the R is, and T, and tactical, right? But as a smart futures, I think and talk about every day, we need to recognize we have to design sustainable systems into being. We have to look at metrics that matter. And the metrics that matter here is that there are more successful collaborations between Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the ground in terms of engineering change. The agents are indeed us. We are the ones that are going to make that happen. In my smart future is about resilience. We have to design these ideas and projects in such a way that they're resilient. So at the technical level, we're talking about, yes, cybersecurity. We don't own any cybersecurity big firms, but we certainly know people who are capable of doing that. And so how do we build that into our system so we may not be hijacked because we're doing something against the status quo? Technology, transformational use of technology. There's a lot of concern. I just got back from Saudi Arabia talking about space debris. And there's a kind of concern that if 1 or 2 companies own all the satellites in the world, Africa will not be able to put up enough satellites to manage its own data. So how do we begin to model all these things and to help solve these complex problems? I do believe we have heard from people here, and we've heard from individuals here about ways in which we can collaborate differently. We can use a metaverse approach to build decision support systems that bring us across different borders and boundaries. And so no one is left behind. So I'm excited I hereby say that we are going to be having an email to follow this up, that begins to put in place that we have asked for, to identify people like Kwabena and myself who are kind of out here as professional networkers to a certain extent. That's what we do. And of course, we have people on the ground on this call who are professional networkers as themselves, because anybody who volunteers to run an organization or start one is a professional network builder. So we have what it takes. We have people who are experts in writing grants on this call. We have people who are expert in starting business and putting in place timelines. And so I know Temi is going to be a good person that's making sure we're, keeping an agile leader, agile project design. We have what it takes here. So I'm very excited to know that we can begin to demonstrate that we can help Africa meet the goals, ensure we're part of the fourth and fifth industrial revolution with its challenges of AI, Internet of Things, robotics, quantum computing. We have that talent in our community. And so I just want to thank all the wonderful panelists that have helped to make my day a very wonderful day today. I'm so excited. And again, as always, this is Future Sense Now, that says, let us have salient ideas about our emerging future from those of us who are shaping our shared futures. Until next time, safe journeys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.